What's up, guys? Thanks so much for stopping by the channel again. We are continuing on our series here where we're covering the very many aspects of the Birthright campaign setting, first introduced in 2nd ed D&D. And we're basically going to start here looking at the Ruins of Empire book, which comes in the core box, which basically explores the many areas that comprise the now shattered and former empire of Anuire. So we're going to take a look at the introduction here real quick, and then we're going to take a little side detour and kind of look at the actual major areas that the book comprises, and then we will in a separate video start with basically the first of those areas and then kind of explore each of the holdings or countries, etc. in order there. So we're going to just read this little bit of the introduction, then we'll move on to the summaries of the different areas here. So, ragged bluffs stand sentinel before a harsh cerulean coastline. Waves strike the rocks and send a salty spray shooting high into the air. The fragrant woods beyond seem to beckon, tiny towns occasionally peeking out from the foliage. The thick forest eventually gives way to rolling hills which grow into snow-capped peaks. Around them, a land of grandeur unfolds, the land of Anuire. So, this dominion, comprising the southwestern corner of the continent of Cerulia on a world called Ebrenis, certainly holds its share of wonders. The mighty river Maesel wanders down from the deep northern forest, flowing past farm and field and past the blackened battle sites that mar the Heartlands. Although the land attempts to heal itself after each new war, some scars never mend. Ultimately, the Maesel rushes through a grand city that stretches across an entire string of islands connected by an intricate network of bridges and ferries. The ruins just outside the city still smolder 500 years after the explosion that leveled the College of Sorcery there. Within the man-made borders crisscrossing this landscape stretches the land called Anuire, the Ruins of Empire. Between the Silverhead Mountains to the north and the Straits of Arel in the south, and the Tail Firth to the west, and the Gulf of Coronace in the east, lie more than 350,000 square miles that comprise Anuire, and nearly every inch of every one of those miles is claimed by one region or another. 30 kingdoms fall within these lands, each covering as much territory as its ruler can hold. Still, there's no shortage of land for someone with the ambition and the ability to conquer. The war-torn landscape has seen many would-be conquerors, but none ever again like Roel, the man who forged the vast Anuirean Empire across Cerulia so long ago. Alright guys, now that we have that intro out of the way, we're going to take a look at each of the sort of major sectors here, or areas that comprise the former Empire of Anuire. So, one can divide Anuire into 5 distinct regions: its southern and western coasts, the Heartlands, and the northern and eastern marches. Each has its own clear personality. So, we will start with the southern coast here. The most civilized area of Anuire, the south, has been settled longer than the new gods have enjoyed their heavenly thrones. Few places here have escaped takeover by humankind. As the residents can attest, the area is full of excitement and sites of interest. Old castles hide a wealth of information about the Anuire of days past. The Straits of Arel, just to the south, are home to the feared sea drake, while the Spiderfell to the north houses another abomination. And places of mystery still remain: the Erebanian in Erenwe, as well as domains such as Mieres, whose dark secrets have rendered them all but lost to the rest of the land. Alright, moving on to the western coast. More savage than the south, the west feels the lash of fierce storms off the Miere Ruan, or the Sea of Storms. The locals, most of whom make their living fishing and farming, regard the storms as divine tests of character and face the winds and waves with grim fortitude. Though Halen remains their patron deity, they also revere Kureiken and Nesirie. The western land is wooded and rocky, with jagged mountains to the east. The air feels constantly chilly, and fog regularly rolls in from the sea. One might expect locals to be as gloomy as their land. Not so. Once the workday ends, they give themselves over to mirth, for only rarely do they face hardships beyond the storms. One Anshe, Rove the elf, lives nearby, but he seems more intent on destroying kings than peasants. The Elven Woad runs through the coastal areas, but there's little danger of the Galicidhe. We are butchering that. We will get that pronunciation right. But the elven hunt from even the most human-hating elves. The elves who have not withdrawn to Tuar Hivel and the Sealwoad attack the gnoll and goblin populations that plague the west. Alrighty, moving on to the Heartlands. The most fertile area of Anuire also contains the old imperial capital, the city of Anuire. Kings have fought to control this city for centuries, so the Heartlands region has seen battles too numerous to count. Everyone still wants control of the area's resources, but many don't wield enough power, and most can survive with the bounty of the Heart. The Heartlands comprises mostly rolling farmland, dotted with crags and bluffs. Lakes and rivers appear here and there, though not in such profusion as in the east. Despite the occasional patch of swamp or moor, the land here looks well kept and cultivated. Yet, places exist where no grasses grow, where bare earth and rocks lie open to the sky like a festering wound. These are the battlefields of the heart, where great hosts still meet to decide the fate of kingdoms. Some rulers realize the folly of destroying in war the very places they're fighting for, so they agree to marshal their armies where death already has been dealt. Of course, not everyone honors this policy. The northern marches are the most dangerous and least civilized part of Anuire. This area is home to only 2 kingdoms from the old empire, for the land still seems hostile to civilization. Dosone and Cariel lie nearly surrounded by inimical forces. Dosone borders 3 non-human lands as well as Stjordvik and Rurik. Cariel shares its borders with 4 non-human realms. Life in these lands is uncertain and nearly as brutal as in neighboring Vosgard. The nobles and rulers here have little time to waste on pleasantries and pleasures. They must instead save their energies for the unceasing battles against enemies on all sides. And finally, the Eastern Marches. So a traveler's first impression of the Eastern Marches is one of dampness. There is water everywhere, from the swamps of Osoridae to the rivers of Coronace. Most who live here become bargemen or fisherfolk, though some farming and woodcutting goes on too. The people act fairly civilized and relaxed and could become excellent politicians, so adept are they at hiding their true feelings. However, most have no desire to venture into politics. They just want to live as they please. All right, guys, so that is a quick overview of sort of the main areas that comprise sort of the former empire here. And again, that's just a very rough idea. So the southern coast, the Heartlands, and the western coasts are certainly where a lot of the sort of heavy hitters are, that are countries that are either large or have a lot of power, whether it's political, economic, or military, or some combination of that. But there are some of the major contenders for possibly reclaiming the throne and sort of reforging the empire down here, which we'll cover in turn as well. And these, again, as it was kind of mentioned in the descriptions, are like the most populated, civilized areas, and there's very little sort of unexplored land, if any. There are some threats, as they mentioned here, which again we'll cover in detail. But as we go towards the east, where it's still fairly civilized, but there are some other dangers, and there's some ongoing issues like civil war in one of the countries and some other types of threats. And obviously bordering on as we'll see, bordering on a larger body of water there as well, with some hostile territories further east and to the northeast. And then, as it mentions here, the northern marches are certainly rather wild and uncivilized, with only sort of 2 former countries or provinces of the empire still being in existence there, and very much on the sort of the frontier of things. And again, bordered by many not so hostile, or sorry, not so friendly neighbors, some of them different human populations, as they mentioned, the Rurik, which we'll cover in a separate series of videos as well, but also several non-human kingdoms, not the least of which is a fairly large goblin kingdom. So that's, again, one of the interesting features of this setting. So you have actual elven, basically actual non-human nations, and not just dwarven and elven like you might expect. And the elves certainly are very hostile in this setting overall, but you have countries comprising goblins, Orogs in other territories, and even basically evil dwarves and other things as well. So there's so many things going on here. So, but that's just a quick synopsis of that. We are going to start our series here covering the southern coast and kind of moving on through these in turn as we make our progress through the book. And again, really going into some detail on each of the major countries here, and then some of the other smaller holdings that don't necessarily show up geographically on a map. So things like guild networks, various churches, and in some cases the ruler of the country might also be the head of the church, as we'll see, and then various wizard sources there, and just kind of some suggestions, strengths and weaknesses of the various countries, ways to maybe approach them if you were to run them as a player. Some are not available to be played as the player, so things for the DM to consider there, or things to also be on the lookout for if you are the player. So we'll cover each of these in great detail, so stay tuned for that, guys. Again, this is just the start, very start of our coverage here on Birthright, so plenty more to come in the near future, so stay tuned. And thanks so much again for stopping by. Let us know also in the comments, if you've played Birthright, if you've had some passing interest, never kind of got into it. Just let us know in the comments, maybe some of your favorite countries or places to play as. Definitely want to hear from you guys, so just let us know, and we're always looking to respond right away as well. So, but again, thanks so much for stopping by. We will see you in the next one. Take care.